Welcome to my Maori Wrasse Paint With Me tutorial. I haven't seen one of these fish while scuba diving, so I thought that I would bring it to life with paint instead. This tutorial is for my colouring club members. If you haven't joined yet, you can join via my website kobeannmore.com. If you have already joined and you have received your outline and your paint palette, let's get started. What you will need is 2 paintbrushes, 1 medium round and 1 small round, and 2 water dishes. The first thing we are going to do is paint the entire fish blue. So using the medium round brush and a medium amount of pigment, we are going to completely cover the fish shape with blue. Except for the eye, don't paint the eye. So you don't want this to be too light, so we are using a reasonable amount of pigment, but you also don't want it to be too dark, so you're not using too much pigment. What you're trying to aim for is maybe like an equal amount of water to pigment ratio. If you're not sure, always start lighter because you can always add more pigment later, but it's much harder to remove pigment. It's not impossible, but it is much harder. If you're finding it difficult to get into the smaller tips of the fins, you can switch to your smaller brush for this. I did manage to use the medium round for the entire shape, but if you need to, just switch brushes. So then we are just going to let that dry before we start the next step. So when your blue layer has dried, we are going to use the deep sap green to add some shading to the fish. For this step, we are still using the medium round brush because we just want to block in areas of green. We're not going into too much detail. So the areas that we're going to add green pigment to are under the belly, in the body of the fin, but leaving the edge of the fin blue. I kind of messed this part up and I added green all the way to the edge of the fin. But if you can leave the edge of the fin blue, that would probably look better. That was the aim, but I messed it up. Anyway, we are also going to add green pigment to the fin underneath the fish. I don't know what that is called. Hold on, let me look it up. It is a pelvic fin. So we're going to add some green there, and then we're going to add green all the way along the belly of the fish and down to the other fin. That one is called the anal fin. That makes me laugh because clearly I am not a grown-up yet. Anyway, moving on. The next thing we are going to do is paint all the way along the top edge of the fish. So we're going to paint above the eye on the head of the fish and then all the way along the body of the fish. We do want to cover all of the hexagonal shapes on the fish's back, but keep most of the darker pigment towards the edge of the fish's body. So you can see what I'm doing here is adding dark pigment along the edge of the fish and then blending that down into the body of the fish. So you get a nice little gradient from the edge to the center of the fish. Then we are going to add some green pigment to the fin on the top of the fish, which is called the dorsal fin. And finally, we will add some green pigment to the tail. For the tail, I added more green pigment where it attaches to the body, and I left blue pigment towards the outer edge of the tail. And I just used a little bit of water to blend that so that you get a bit of a gradient. And then we are going to let that dry before we start the next step. So once that's completely dry, we are going to be adding in some details using the small round brush. This time we're going back to the blue pigment and we are going to be painting in all of the finer details. So basically what we're going to be doing is painting over most of the lines. So that is the lines on the fins, the inside edge of the lines around the body of the fish, all of the lines around the hexagons across the back of the fish, the outside edge of the pectoral fin. For this one, we do want to make sure we stay outside of the fin because we want to add a little bit of shadow between the body of the fish and the pectoral fin. So you can see what I'm doing here is adding blue pigment to the outside edge of the fin and then using some water to blend that into the rest of the body. And then we are just going to add some blue pigment to all of these little lines across the body of the fish. And that's all of the areas that I added details, but you can add blue pigment details anywhere that you think would look nice. You could also add some green pigment details here. It's completely up to you. You can also let it dry because it will dry slightly lighter and then come back and add more details as needed. So in step 4, we're going to be painting the background. In this step, it's going to involve a lot of drying time. If you want to make this process a little bit faster and you have a hairdryer, you can use a hairdryer to dry the paint in between each of the layers. But you do want to make sure that your paint is dry in between each layer. So either you're going to be leaving it to dry or, speeding it up with a hairdryer. So using the medium round brush and the green pigment with lots and lots of water, so we're using light green, we are going to completely paint the background. And once that's done, we are going to let that dry. And then once your paint is completely dry, we can add another layer on top of the first layer. But what we're going to do this time is skip the first little section of seaweed. So you can see here what I'm doing is using the small round brush to carefully paint around the edge of the little seaweed section in the bottom corner. I will just speed this up so you can see the whole process. So you can see that I'm painting very carefully around the seaweed. And then I'm going to switch to the medium round brush to add a green wash to the rest of the background. When your second layer is done, we are going to let that dry before we start the next layer. So once your paint is dry, we are just going to repeat the same process as before, but this time we will carefully paint around the next layer of seaweed. So this way we are going to create a gradient where the bottom corner has the lightest piece of seaweed, and then as we move to the top of the painting, it will get darker and darker. So I will speed this up again so that you can see that I'm just following the same process as before, using the small round brush to carefully paint around the edge of the seaweed, and then switching to the medium round brush to add a wash of paint over the rest of the background. And then once you have completely covered the background, we will let that dry. And then we're just going to repeat this process again and again and again. So I will speed this video up and show you the whole process. So the final step for this tutorial is adding in the finer details. If you're happy with your design, you don't have to do this step, but what I wanted to do was to add in some shading between each of the seaweed layers. So just using the small round brush and a small amount of pigment, green pigment, I just added a little bit of shading around the edges of each of the seaweed shapes. So I am focusing more around the base of the seaweed shape. I'm trying to create a little bit of shadow between each of the seaweed pieces. Let me speed this video up and I'll show you what I mean. The final thing that I did, and again, this is completely optional, it depends on what your artwork is looking like, but I decided to add a light green wash over the background behind the fish. I just wanted this area to be a little bit darker, but if you're happy with the way yours looks, you don't have to do this. Final touches are completely personal preference, based on what your artwork looks like and where you want darker areas and lighter areas. So yeah, that's the end of this tutorial. Play around with it, have fun with it. I can't wait to see your final artworks. You can share them with me on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. My handle is @KobeAnnMoore. Or you can leave a review on my website and upload a picture there. Thank you so much for painting with me and being part of my Colouring Club community.